I'm Rich Boord. I'm with J-Par Maryland Living. I'm here with Ryan Van Riper with Grateful Acres Lighting and Irrigation. How you doing, Ryan?
Good, man. How's it going?
Good. So, we've discussed a little bit about in-ground irrigation systems and stuff, and specifically to maybe new homeowners. What's something they should know?
So, generally, when we meet with new homeowners when they have an irrigation system, we talk about some basic things to bring to their attention that they might want to know about. Number one being the main shutoff valve located in the house. Generally, in most cases, it's located by the main water source. Usually where your hot water heater is. In some cases, if you're on a well system, it will be where your water treatment system is located. And in most cases, we put a tag on the ball valve itself. That way, it's easily identified in case of emergency. If you ever end up with like a major leak or anything like that, you can go to the primary water source and shut the water off. If in fact that does happen, shutting the water off would be the first thing to do, and then the second thing would be to do is to turn the irrigation controller off as well. Okay. Reason being is once you shut the water off to the irrigation system, the system will still activate electronically, so you want to be sure to turn the controller off as well, so in order not to cause any damage to the valves. Without water in them, they're basically working dry, so we would want to make sure we shut those off as well. So it's, that's would be the number one thing. The number two is controller location. We talked about before about in most cases, if you have a garage, they're located in the garage. They're usually pretty easily identified. They're basically just a gray box in most cases that are hung on the wall.
What does that control?
So the controller, the irrigation controller, is it just electronically opens each individual valve out in the field or out in your lawn. And what that does is when the water is turned on and the system is active, the irrigation system is designed or installed in zones. So, for example, zone one, say you have a flower bed in your front yard. Zone one, would be for your flower beds, whether it's a spray head or underground drip irrigation. So the controller will activate at a set time. Generally, we program the controllers to activate early in the morning before the sun rises. Reason being is to avoid wasting water due to evaporation. Also, you get better saturation, obviously, when the sun is still down. So generally speaking, we start to irrigate around 3 to 4 in the morning, depending on the size of the system. That way, everything gets irrigated before the sun's up and you're not wasting valuable money on watering your lawn or your plants.
Okay. And what's this?
So this thing here is a Backflow device. This is a 3/4 inch Wilkins PVB pressure vacuum breaker. This is the most important component to your irrigation system. Not generally, but you always see these on the exterior of the house. So when you would see this on the exterior of the house, it will be hung 18 inches higher than the lowest head on the irrigation system. So you would have, and in most cases you see copper. You would have a line that comes out of the foundation of the house into the bottom of the backflow preventer. Right on this portion here, you'll have a T where there will be a plug, an insert plug. That plug is what we use when we winterize the irrigation system. We would connect a compressor hose to blow all the water out of the entire irrigation system.
Okay.
So this is what we call the upstream side, and then on this side is the downstream side. So this side is what actually feeds the irrigation main line, and that is the pipe in the ground that is constantly pressurized with water during the irrigation season.
Okay.
So when we come to turn the sprinkler system on, we would first insert the plug, come and knock on the door, introduce ourselves, come into the house, and then actually turn on the main water source. Once that's done, what we'll do is we energize the backflow preventer. So you would crack this open a quarter of a way, allow the water inside to pressurize the backflow preventer to make sure that, just make sure there's not leaking. A lot of times during the winter time, bugs and spiders and stuff will kind of make nests in here, which is not really a big deal, but if that does happen, we just take it out and clean it, and,
right.
No problem. So once, we'll energize the backflow, then this valve will be completely open once that happens. And then to energize the main line of the irrigation system, we crack this a quarter of a turn.
Okay.
So you allow the water to slowly fill up the main line or the pipe to the irrigation system. And we do it slowly because depending on the pressure of the system that the house has, if you do it too fast, it can cause damage to the valve. And it's basically just water pressure slamming against the rubber gaskets inside the valve. It can split the valves or cause damage to them. So we do this slowly. And in most cases, you can hear the water running. And once you hear the water stop running, you know that the main line of the irrigation system is completely full of water, completely charged and ready to go. So then we will just crack the valve back all the way to full. And then from that point on, we would start testing each individual zone, make sure all the heads are adjusted correctly, and go on from there. And then we can set up the sprinkler system based on our recommendations or whatever you choose to do.
Right. So when it comes to winterizing and de-winterizing, when should people call you and use a professional?
Yeah. So I've been doing this for over 20 years, and we've run into a lot of situations where homeowners try to winterize these themselves. And the problem is most home air compressors are not designed for volume of air. They're designed to run simple tools like a nail gun or something. And we use a toe-behind compressor that pushes 60 psi at a continuous rate, meaning that it never stops to recharge. It continuously blows 60 psi worth of air through the system. And that's really the only way that you can get every single drop of water out of the pipes, out of the heads, and most importantly, out of the backflow preventer. My experience has been over the years that this is typically the first thing that will freeze if the system has not been winterized correctly. Simply due to the fact that it's exposed to all the elements. This is outside, you see this, it's not in the ground. So this will be the first thing that splits or breaks or cracks due to freezing. Okay. So I highly recommend calling a professional to winterize the system, just simply to the fact of the compressor that we use or that we own and we use in-house it's the most efficient way to winterize a sprinkler system correctly.
And when should somebody call?
Yeah, generally speaking, a lot of times we do overseeding, lawn aeration and stuff like that, and we start in September for that service. Generally speaking, before December, because historically, December is really when we start to really see temps drop below freezing, usually right at night. Also every winter's different, so the earlier you call to get on the schedule, the better. Just to ensure that you have a place on the schedule and that your system will be taken care of. Usually we don't see any problems, even if it is, say, December 15th, and we've had temperatures below freezing, for the last couple nights. You generally need temperatures below freezing at night and during the day, which doesn't really happen too often, or at least around here. So I would say before December, you should be fine.
Right.
And for the spring, for the reactivation, or what we call a spring startup, February, March, we typically, because of the volume of clients that we have, we start in February activating systems. And in most cases in February, you don't really need to start watering yet, but the system is energized and ready to go. Any repairs that needed to be done, can be done at that time as well. And then the system can be activated whenever the homeowner is ready to turn it on. We'll just keep the controller off. That way, they're not watering, and they can turn it back on in March.
So you mentioned like well systems and city. What's the difference, and how do they affect your irrigation system?
So city water, generally, at least around in this area, your city water systems usually have really good water pressure. The water is extremely clean. So we usually don't end up with issues with sediment clogging the backflow preventer or heads or valves or anything like that. Now on well water systems, depending on how the water is being ran from the treatment system to the actual irrigation system, in some cases what we call dirty water, where the water treatment system has been completely bypassed and the water straight from the well is being fed into the irrigation system, we generally see issues with sediment clogging, whether it's the backflow preventer or the valves that are actually located in the ground for each individual zone. And then also over time, sediment builds up in the bottom of the heads and will basically cause them to kind of just dribble water out of the head. And in cases like that, we can install an inline filter to help pull some of the sediment out of the water, but we would highly recommend going through the water treatment system.
Right.
Now, on the flip side of that is, with a water treatment system, at least how mine's set up, you have a salt tank, and then you have a water, you have a chemical treatment tank, where it basically puts a small amount of bleach or whatever into the water just to get rid of that smell from well water. So if your irrigation system is pulling water from the actual water treatment system, if you're on a well, you are going to see those chemicals depleted a lot faster than normal usage.
Okay.
Meaning that, my system, generally we fill the salt every once a month. But during the irrigation time, you might be doing it every 2 weeks.
Okay.
The same thing with your chemical treatment tank. And basically all that really is, from my understanding, is just it adds additional minerals to your water, and then also it takes out that eggshell smell that a lot of wells have. So you'll see those two things depleted relatively quickly. And just keep an eye on them. Really, there's not anything bad that can happen if they do run dry. Your salt tank, you definitely want to keep an eye on. You want to make sure that that's full.
Yeah.
But in most cases, you have a company that treats your well system, and if they have, between us and them, we can all work together to make sure everything is, taken care of. And
awesome.
Yeah.
So how often should somebody get their system inspected?
So we offer, in the spring, we do the spring turn on, where we come in, we energize the irrigation system, we test each individual zone, we set up the controller with either our recommendations or what the client would like to have. So, and if any repairs or adjustments need to be made, we usually make them at that time. And then in the wintertime, we have the closing. So we do offer what we call a mid-season inspection. Generally during the time when the summer starts to roll around and the heat increases, the humidity increases. In most cases, it's as simple as just adding additional runtime to different areas throughout the lawn that may start to see browning due to the heat or such like that. And then in the winter, when we close the system down, if there's any repairs that need, a head that isn't working correctly or broken, we can replace it in the following spring. Right. But for the most part, if you have a certified licensed irrigation contractor and they come in the spring, you shouldn't really run into any issues throughout the irrigation season.
Right.
If the system is taken care of correctly, you shouldn't have too many problems with it. No.
If somebody has a irrigation system, they need maintenance and stuff, how can they reach you?
Give us a call or send us an email, and we'll respond to you as quickly as possible, and we'll take it from there.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah.